Oh, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the June meeting of the Colorado Board of State Land Commissioners. And we have just taken the board out of executive session motion to be led by our esteemed counsel.
Excuse me. Good morning. My name is Ed Hamrick, and I'm an Assistant Attorney General, and I represent the State Board of Land Commissioners. And this morning, the board was in executive session to discuss two matters that were noticed on their agenda for executive session. First, a status update on the Mount Princeton geothermal litigation in Denver District Court, case number 2025 CV 33341. That matter was authorized for executive session under 246402(3)(a), 2 and 3 of the Colorado Revised Statute. And also a employment matter, the board's review of the director, which was authorized for executive session under 246402(3)(b)(1) of the Colorado Revised Statutes. No decisions were made in executive session, and the matter the board is now back on the record and ready to proceed with its regular agenda. Thank you.
Counselor. As we start the meeting here, I'd like to open it up for public comment on non-agenda items.
Folks listening along online, if you'd like to make a comment on a non-agenda item.
Someone in the room.
Or in the room, yep. Raise your hand function or raise your hand and we'll invite you up for a comment. So if we have any in-person comments, please come on up.
They're here.
You want to use the mic? You can. I'm good, not.
They're fine.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming everybody knows that I'm not going to be here next year.
And could you introduce yourself for the record?
My name is Don Gilson.
Yes.
I'm at the Sherman Creek Ranch. Near BC. I know that you understand I won't be here next year, and then the lease is going to go to somebody else. There's some things I think that you didn't ask yesterday. One of them is what went on at the ranch very likely will happen again at some point. I can tell you that my feeling is when you choose the next person, that one of the things that made things work as well as they could have with us was the cooperation that we had between myself and CPW. Okay, and I think that needs to be a very big consideration when you're doing that renewal, because if it wasn't for the way they were with me, I tried to be with them, we would have made a bad situation worse. So that's something that I think you should, when you redo this, to me, that's a very important thing that you should understand. So, because we will keep getting wolves there. That will happen again. It's a very stressful situation for everybody involved. And not being able to get along with the agencies that you're going to have to cooperate with will not help things out. It'll take a bad situation. So I did want you to understand that. So leave it at that for right now. I don't mind talking to some of you after we're done, so.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you very much for those insights and for providing them and coming today. Really appreciate it.
Other folks who are listening along online, if you'd like to make public comment, please use the raise hand function. Any other folks in the room wishing to make public comment on that agenda item?
Right. Then moving to announcements, the first announcement is that we're going to modify the proceedings today to respect the time of our visitors who have an interest in the Sherman Creek Ranch, which is an information item. So following announcements and the Department of Natural Resources executive report, we will then go to information items and then return to the final action elements of our agenda. So, Director Rosamarino.
Thank you, Chair Probe. I have one delightful announcement, which is we have promoted Erica Carlson to Stewardship Associate. She's very deserving. She's been with our agency for a year and a half, very accomplished. You can read all about her in the staff report. This was a position made possible through HB 1332. Just delighted to have Erica in that role, doing good work. And she started June 1. That's it.
We're excited to interact with her. All right, Mr. Ray, are you on screen for the DNR report?
I am. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Terrific. Good morning, commissioners. For the record, my name is Aaron Ray. I serve as Director of Policy in the Executive Director's Office at DNR. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person this morning, but I am happy to be able to provide an update on behalf of Executive Director Dan Gibbs. I'll start with two DNR staffing updates for you. First, I'm excited to announce that Sarah Hamming has been hired to serve as DNR's Director of Legislative Affairs. Sarah has been serving in that role in an acting capacity for the last few months, and we're delighted she's now our permanent legislative director. She previously served as CPW's legislative analyst, and I know many of you have interacted with Sarah over the last few months, and we're really excited for her to be in this role in a permanent fashion. Second, I want to share that DNR has hired a new human resources director, Dava Deschler. Dava comes to DNR from the U.S. Department of the Interior, where she last served as the agency's chief learning officer. Dava is stepping into the role previously held by Richard Fields, who was recently elevated to the position of DNR's chief operating officer. Moving to budget and legislative updates, the Executive Director's Office is in the process of developing our budget and legislative priorities for fiscal year 26-27. As I believe most will be aware, the state continues to face significant budget challenges, and we expect budgetary cuts across departments again next fiscal year. We're also in the process of evaluating our legislative priorities for the upcoming legislative session, although we anticipate that our final legislative priorities will be determined later in the year than normal, given the upcoming gubernatorial transition. I do want to report that the new Pikes Peak Sentinel Landscape designation was formally approved last week. This announcement comes after several years of hard work by numerous staff members within DNR, including the state land board staff, who've worked with a coalition of NGO, military, and federal agency partners to establish a new Sentinel Landscape designation for the greater Colorado Springs region. The Sentinel Landscape Partnership is a coalition of federal agencies, state and local governments, and private organizations that works with willing landowners and land managers to advance sustainable land use practices around military installations and ranges. For the Pikes Peak designation, the military installations in the area prioritized addressing incompatible land use, water and energy security, and wildfire mitigation. And this builds on the good work that the State Land Board has already been doing in coordination with the Trust for Public Lands, the Nature Conservancy, the Palmer Land Trust, through the SOAR initiative to permanently protect 80,000 acres of priority state trust lands over the next 5 to 10 years. So we're really excited about this Sentinel Landscape designation, and we think it has good things in store for the greater Colorado Springs area. Additional federal updates. Colorado Parks and Wildlife has submitted comments to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in response to Fish and Wildlife's request for information regarding the implementation of the Gray Wolf 10J rule in Colorado. CPW has worked in partnership with Fish and Wildlife Service and with Colorado's producer community throughout the planning and implementation of the wolf restoration program, and looks forward to continuing those partnerships. Separately, the Bureau of Land Management is currently accepting public comment on their upcoming December oil and gas lease sale. This sale includes 114 oil and gas parcels totaling almost 127,000 acres within Archuleta, La Plata, Los Animas, Weld, Arapahoe, Gunnison, Garfield, and Rio Blanco counties. And the deadline for comments is July 9th. The BLM is also proposing to revise federal grazing regulations to establish a new part of those regulations addressing land health management, relocating certain provisions within those regulations, and making further conforming updates. And the deadline for comments on those changes is July 13th. I'll pause here at the end of the federal updates before moving on to see if there are any questions or comments about any of those items. Okay, moving to water. According to the U.S. Drought Monitor, as of June 4th, all of Colorado's 64 counties are currently experiencing at least abnormally dry conditions, and 93% of the state is in moderate to exceptional drought. The May 1st stream flow forecast project runoff ranging from 21 to 37% of median across Colorado's river basins. And this water year has been the warmest on record in Colorado, which has contributed to early snowmelt, extremely low river flows, diminished soil moisture conditions, and elevated wildfire risk. As you know, the Colorado Drought Task Force was activated earlier this year, and on June 4th, the governor issued a state drought emergency declaration. In that declaration, the governor directed state agencies to conserve water and to identify additional emergency response actions that could include distributing emergency funding and a potential request for a federal disaster declaration. So I expect more action from the Drought Task Force and potentially from the governor as the summer continues. On the energy front, the Colorado Produced Water Consortium held an in-person meeting in Trinidad on June 12th. Consortium gathered local feedback and public comment from across the Raton Basin, and their next meeting will be virtual this September. I'm also pleased to note that ECMC and the Colorado State BLM office have signed an updated memorandum of understanding that clarifies the regulatory roles for federal and fee mineral development in the state that builds upon previous MOUs between the two agencies. And we continue to expect that US EPA will approve ECMC's application to be the primary regulator of Class 6 or carbon sequestration wells in the state. We expect that announcement anytime. On the state legislative front, I'll note that on June 1st, the governor signed Senate Bill 26-142 into law. That bill focuses on accelerating the development of Colorado's geothermal resources. That bill does a number of things, including expanding the eligible size of community geothermal gardens, creating a voluntary geothermal data collection program, and directing ECMC to work with other state agencies and stakeholders to identify recommendations for additional steps to encourage geothermal development. Those recommendations are due from ECMC to the General Assembly by November 15th. I'll also note that on the 10th of June, ECMC released the annual Cumulative Impacts Report, which is available on ECMC's website. Colorado is the first and the only state in the country to require cumulative impact reporting for energy development. And so we're proud to have that annual report completed for this past year. Moving to forestry, as many of you know, the Front Range is experiencing an outbreak of mountain pine beetle in the Ponderosa pine forests of the Front Range. In December, the governor created the Ponderosa Mountain Pine Beetle Task Force. That task force met earlier this week in Teller County and approved a comprehensive work plan to guide their work, as well as identify immediate priorities for the coming months. In addition, the Colorado Strategic Wildfire Action Program has 54 active projects going this summer, including 13 in partnership with the Colorado Youth Corps and 5 in partnership with Colorado Department of Corrections Swift Crews. And another round of COSWAP landscape resilience investment grants will be released this fall. Finally, CPW has announced the most recent list of projects funded by oil and gas production fees authorized by Senate Bill 24-230. The new projects include $4 million for the Colorado Wildlife Habitat Program for the acquisition and protection of critical wildlife habitat, additional funding for greenback cutthroat trout recovery, funding for staff at the Native Seed Warehouse to support large-scale habitat reclamation, funding to support prairie dog management and black-footed ferret conservation efforts in the state, and funding to support the purchase of senior water rights for Golden Gate Canyon State Park and Ralston Creek State Wildlife Area. So we're happy to see that those production fee revenues continue to be put to good use at CPW. That concludes my prepared remarks, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Aaron, it's Deb. What was the deadline for comment on the BLM oil and gas auction? And I'm imagining this is the same one that includes the acres on the Roan Plateau. And if that's all true, you were saying that DNR is commenting on that?
The deadline for comments for the December oil and gas lease sale is July 9th. I will double check and confirm that this lease sale includes those Roan Plateau parcels and get back to you on that. But the department generally does comment on these quarterly lease sales, and we are evaluating this to see if we will comment this quarter. But as I've said in the past, we generally do. And I'll share more information about the particular parcels with you after this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, commissioners? Thank you as always for providing a pithy and concise report. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to be with you. Enjoy the time in Walden. Thanks.
Will do. All right, then. Let's move to information items, the first of which is the Sherman Creek Ranch status and RFP process.
More than I could. Morning, Commissioners. Jared Smith, Northwest District Manager.
And Eddie Medina, Recreation Program Manager.
We are here this morning to present an information item for you all. Abe and I have worked together with the Sherman Creek Ranch RFP. A little history on this project. The Sherman Creek Ranch was purchased by the State Land Board in 2017. It was a historic ranch that was established early in the valley as a horse ranch, and then Adams Ranch, which was formed in 1957. State Land Board ownership surrounded this private property, which was just over 1,900 acres. The land board surrounded it on the east, the north, and the west sides of the property. So when this property came up for sale, the land board decided to purchase it to consolidate ownership in that area and take the acres that the private ranch was leasing from the land board and create a larger contiguous property. So the first RFP that we did for this property was in 2018. Don Gittleson, who spoke earlier, was the first lessee on the property once we consolidated all the private ownership with the existing state land. So we appreciate Don's tenure on the property. He was learning on a lease, as were we, with the water rights that came with it, the grazing and the irrigation and things that we hadn't experienced with that being on the private side of things. So with the RFP that's upcoming, we are offering both an ag lease and a rec lease to the public or third parties to bid on. The improvements that we saw yesterday are are all included. Most of the improvements are found within the ranch headquarters. That includes corrals, livestock scale, the house that the land board installed in 2018 to serve as a residence for the lessee, either rec or ag, whoever needs it. There is the original homestead on the property that the land board we need to make a decision to either put money into fixing it up or to remove it from the property. And that is typically something that we want to work with proposals on. So we don't want to make decisions prior to a lessee coming on board, and they may have a vision that would work that we hadn't thought of or seen before. So I mentioned there was water that came with the property, the private property that we purchased. There's 5 water rights that came with that, and we reviewed some of that yesterday during the site visit. So I'll let Abe speak about the timeline for the RFP.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. We're in front of you today to give an information item on the RFP process that is upcoming. The current lease on the property, the current agriculture and recreation lease on the property are held by Gittleson Family Cattle Company. And those 2 leases are set to expire in about 19 months. So in order to get ahead of the process and start preparing for that, we have put together an RFP offering, as Jared mentioned, both for the agricultural grazing and also on the recreation side, specifically for hunting on the property for the next, and offering them for another 10-year leases. So later this month, staff plans to issue a new RFP or post it on the website, providing an offering for both the hunting lease and the grazing lease on the property. The general timeframe for this process, later this summer or later in the year, we will be offering a tour to all interested parties interested in submitting a proposal on the property. I believe that is scheduled sometime around August. That's a mandatory tour. We like individuals who are proposing or considering submitting a proposal to us to make sure they understand the property, have a good feeling for it, and what the opportunities are that they are bidding on. The RFP process will stay open until about September, at which time there'll be a deadline for candidates to submit or put forth their proposals. In October of this year, those proposals will be reviewed through an internal review committee. And it also includes interviews with top candidates to discuss a little bit more details about their proposals. And then finally, a selection, that committee will put forth a finalist for each lease type. That finalist that the committee puts forward will be brought to the board, and for the board's for the board's consideration and either review, approval or denial of that finalist. So that is the final selection is a board approval process. And then after, assuming that we have selected and do have an approved lessee for those 2 leases, in next year, sometime about mid next year, we'll work on finalizing those leases, getting them put together in order for the new lessee to come on the property starting January of 2028. So we still got a little bit of time, but this is an extensive process. We try to do a lot of deliberation, or we try to put forth a RFP that is comprehensive, so that folks understand what they're bidding on, and then also it's a pretty comprehensive process on the state land board side with their review committee to review the proposals, make sure that they're aligned. Those proposals are aligned with our long-term goals on the property as well. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jared.
Do commissioners have any questions? Yes.
With the overhouse, I think Don said spending about $1,200 a month on heating when he was keeping it at 30 degrees.
No,
Not quite, but
so you can't keep it at 40 or you'll freeze.
right.
But in the winter months, like when it's really cold, June, it was 1,400. I turned it to 1,500.
So
It's only electrocuted. It was converted over at one time. It had fireplaces in it.
yeah, but now it's electric.
Now it's electric.
Is there any reason? That sounds pretty unattractive to a lessee. Is there any reason not to do something about that right away? You know, working around Don? Or what's the decision on that house?
Yeah, so originally, we had planned to remove the house
Mhm.
when we had installed the new house. And with the Gittlesons on the property, I will say we had trouble finding contractors that could do the work with the budget that we had set up. And Gittlesons did ask to utilize the house as it was.
Yeah.
And we wanted to respect their needs. And so again, I think it depends on if we have a lessee that says, we want a second structure. We need it for kind of our plans, and that might kind of steer our decision whether we remove it or we try to insulate it, make it better. Don?
So before they moved the newer structure on the property, they tried to get bid to, fix the older structure up. Nobody wants to give you a bid on that. It's too old.
Yeah.
So they would only do time and material, or the one bid that did come in, I think was up over $400,000. He was not gonna bid it to where he by any means would lose money. So he bid it so high, he could tear the thing down and put something else there.
Thank you for that. As a point of procedure here, there's an information item and we don't customarily engage with the public on it. So
Okay.
just as a reminder
Okay.
to everybody.
Sorry.
So yes, are there any other higher level RFP related questions for Jared or Abe?
Yeah, and, you know, after our board visit yesterday or board tour on the property yesterday, any additional thoughts or comments regarding the RFP process?
I have one sort of at a high level for this RFP. Each RFP has a context, right, with the property and the environment. At a high level, what are your objectives for what are our objectives for the property that you'll be designing this RFP to attract and solicit applicants that ideally align with the objectives we have?
Yes, I know with this version of the RFP, as compared to 10 years ago, we are trying to focus more on regenerative agriculture. And so from the ag side, we are trying to cater or pull in bids that are looking at regenerative applications. So possibly rotational grazing or the use of halter, the collar. Yeah, virtual fencing, just, you know, something to assist an operator on, you know, this property does have a lot of rough terrain when you get into the foothills. It has unique challenges that I think a certain operator could probably work well with. And so this, I think with this RFP compared to some of our other RFP offerings, it is different with the high altitude. You know, being in this area, it's offering something different. And I let Abe speak on the rec side of things.
Yeah, I think on the recreation side, certainly working with all the neighboring partners is very important, especially some of the traffic that the ranch has experienced, both from the North Sandhills, which is being converted to a recreation area, of course. And then also, it's the ranch is right next to and adjoins the State Forest State Park. So, you know, the next lessee will be made aware that those relationships exist and working with those adjacent landowners and partners to make sure that it's a good relationship. Certainly heard some of the earlier comments by Mr. Gittleson about, you know, those relationships need to work.
Mr. Heath?
Hey, when you talk about recreation there, do you think just hunting and trapping or other kinds of recreation possibilities?
So currently the offering, we've narrowed it down to a hunting lease. But the reason for that is we would like to keep the opportunity of future uses such as sustainable tourism opportunity available on that property once we have better framework developed for that type of lease offering. So there's certainly some other recreation opportunities that may be offered on the ranch.
Sure. Is there a deadline, or what is the deadline to get comments or ideas to you about the RFP?
Yeah, Assistant Director.
Sorry, I'll let you answer the deadline question, but I had a response also about the goals that I'd like to, but you, please.
Okay, so let's go with that concrete detail.
Okay, I believe comments on the RFP, the document prior to it going public would be by the end of this month. Because the goal is to get this out
Thank you.
to the public, I think, by the end of the month.
And over to you, Assistant Director.
Assistant Director Elliot Wade, I just wanted to build on what Jerry Nabe said about the goals, and also point out, I think you said this, but I'm going to say it again. The structure of this RFP is slightly different in that we have a main document and then a document for agriculture and a document for the specifically the recreation lease for hunting. Part of what the main document we're doing with that is telling the story of the property and setting goals, some of which are agriculture and recreation based. But there's also a section in that has to do with stewardship and sustainability and biodiversity in particular. And so we know that this property has an amazing array of wildlife. We know there's a history of beaver on this property. There is a wildly important goal related to beaver that this property might contribute to. There are other opportunities. You heard about the potential that there might be fens on this property that would fit into our fen stewardship action plan. So we're including that information on these higher level goals that have to do with the reason that the landlord purchased the property and what we hope to have for generations with the land, some of which the lessees for this next 10-year period will contribute to, but some of which obviously stretch beyond that time period that we want everybody to be aware of. So
Yeah, that's sort of what I was looking for, is like, are we going to share our objectives and our philosophies? And aligned with that, I'd be curious what your thoughts are on the best approach for, it's hard to require it, but how might we set ourselves up for this, the choosing of the next applicant? To have someone who's amenable to experimenting and putting forth the effort and time to engage with us on biological carbon or biodiversity credit development.
Your question is how do we do that selection process?
Set ourselves up through this selection process.
It's an excellent question. I think that could be through the questions that we had, but yeah, Jerry, if you've got some thoughts immediately.
Yeah, I believe a good way to approach that is for the land board to either vet or have a relationship with companies or contractors that have experience with
The developers, you mean, sort of those programs?
Yes, yeah, because I think if we set up the RFP to where we say we have experience with these three, it's a carbon sequestration company or a virtual fencing company, offer options for lessees to utilize versus maybe saying, this is what you need to be doing, saying, here's some options. If you're interested, we've already worked with them. We have experience with them. I think that's probably the best approach right now with our RFPs is to, I think, lay it out there for the lessees to take advantage of, or applicants.
That's possible too. I was thinking that by laying out our objectives as specifically as possible, that then maybe during the interview process, that can be a, discussion with the applicants of, this is what these kind of processes look like.
Yeah, I think the targeted questioning based on the criteria that we put in the RFP, we've said things in the RFP like, we think virtual fencing is a very good approach. Please incorporate it if it makes sense for your management style. Don't have to, but somebody that comes in and has a very strong argument to say, here are all the things I'm going to do, and this is why my operation is better than that operation, will come out through the interview process. And then that will be the criteria that the committee is going to be using, trying to balance between hopefully a number of valid applicants for it, which we do believe. I mean, there's been interest expressed, so I think that we will get a number of different people bidding on it.
think that's right. The more we can be explicit about our objectives,
Mhm.
the better people can self-select
Yes,
for applying and
Yes.
people don't waste their time.
If I may, I just wanted to reemphasize what Director Boyd just mentioned. Our process has evolved. I've been involved in these RFPs for 12 years, and it has evolved quite a bit into where we're providing a lot more information in that larger document about what are our goals, what are our objectives, what's important to us on each of these individual properties that we offer for RFPs. And then within that, it starts to, self-select, or folks who are proposing on it, know what's important to us, so that when we get to the interview portion of the process, we can ask more specific questions of how their proposal meets some of our property objectives. So I think the process has gotten much better over the years.
Any other questions, Commissioners? All right, well, thanks for bringing forth this status of this, and we'll look forward to seeing the RFP itself.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, and Director Rosarino. Staff report.
Oh, we're going to go into that. Okay, sure.
Here we'll round up on the information that is and go back to the agenda.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chair Frobe. This is Director Rosarino for the record. So just a few things to highlight in the staff report. We had 96 lease actions this month as a banner month, generating $6.1 million in lease value from those actions. Ag was number one at 3.7 million. Wind energy, number two at 1.6 million. And the single largest action was a $1.3 million value wind energy lease. Also, the staff leasing report shows where it makes sense to actually take a revenue loss. You'll notice an AUM reduction due to drought. So again, our duty to sustainable land management. The next thing I wanted to remind you is to read all about Erica Carlson's wonderful accomplishments and background in her new role as a stewardship associate. We followed up on the conversation last month at the board meeting about vacant parcels. And the analysis was about what parcels are vacant of ag leases. And as you can guess, there's an explanation for why about 3 or 4% of our portfolio does not have an ag lease. Now remember that ag leases can be layered with other leases. But the explanations for why a ag lease might not be in place on a given parcel are lack of access, topography, lack of forage, or other uses, such as state parks or other uses. We are conducting a follow-up analysis about which of our parcels may be devoid of any leases. So that more to come on that. So thanks for that question last time. Also wanted to mention, since it's been raised, the virtual fence, livestock e-collars, lots of enthusiasm among several of our lessees about this technology. And so Halter, which is one of several companies, not the only company, is going to do a presentation to our staff. And so I think that's going to be really helpful in us learning more and more details of this evolving technology. We are sharing information on a range of agricultural issues with CDA, but I'm excited that one of the ideas we just came up with the other day was to do a joint CDA State Land Board workshop on virtual collars. Sorry, Emily, that's probably a total surprise to you. But thanks for your work on that. But it's excited about those workshops, and our workshops have just been on agriculture in particular, have just been incredibly well received. And I think Rachel Turner, our field operations team leader, deserves a lot of credit on that score. So another highlight is staff engagement of CPW on the Lesser Prairie Chicken conservation efforts, and it really fits well with the Stewardship Action Plan you all approved in Lamar in April. But again, our partnership with CPW is just so critical. And I know their staff took our staff out in the field for 2 full days of learning all the ins and outs about lesser prairie chicken conservation and how to improve rangeland condition to help with chicken and help ranch operations. Also want to mention, I'm going to close with 4 of our hardworking staff took time out on a Saturday to participate in the wonderful Shrikes and Bikes cycling event in Genoa, and they hosted an aid station in support of a regional partnership initiative, the Eastern Colorado Grasslands Initiative. So thank you, staff. It was Alec, Abe, I want to say Erica and Lindsay. So thanks for taking time out to do that. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Commissioners? All right, well then let's move back to the action items on our formal agenda. And the first one of those is the Lowry IND fund request.
Walk over and point to the All right, good morning, commissioners. For the record, my name is Rachel Turner, Field Operations Team Lead. Today, I am here to talk to you about an investment and development fund request for Lowry Ranch and some of the ongoing improvement projects that we have going. And I'm going to be relying on Alec to help me with some of the slide changes. So thank you, Alec. This is my first slide here that just shows the general location of Lowry Ranch. It spans nearly 26,000 acres in Arapahoe County and is located just east of the Aurora Reservoir. This is just another location map, kind of giving a little bit more context. I wanted to point out that notably over 83% of the ranch is within the stewardship trust, and our focus on this property is balancing high quality, holistic management with our overarching stewardship and regenerative agriculture practices. Lowry Ranch is a large-scale property that requires ongoing infrastructure investment to maintain its productivity as a premier working cattle ranch. Lowry is one of the large ranches with board-owned improvements, and that is leased through a request for proposal process. Since 2014, Trainer Cattle Company, led by Nick Trainer, has held the agricultural lease. Due to the success of his regenerative grazing practices, the board awarded a second 10-year lease in 2024. Recently, working with district staff, Nick has made plans to replace and or improve necessary infrastructure over the next year to continue enhancing the property's long-term economic value and to support the regenerative grazing practices. This map here shows the current improvements, which includes approximately 60 miles of permanent livestock fence, both barbed wire and high tensile single strand electric. There's extensive stock water system, which is those blue lines on the map. There's metal pipe corrals, a ranch headquarters, office shop and building, and a large pet storage building. Over the past 10 years, the board has invested about $1.3 million into this property. Much of that money going to the new shop, which has helped with multiple of the leases on the property. There's also been quite a bit of development of that high tensile fencing and that water improvements. And those were majority developed collaboratively through the funds that significantly helped offset the costs of the state camp board. Today's request is for $481,566. While this is a significant number, I wanted to emphasize that nearly half of this, over $266,000, has already been secured through EQIP funds. That's been done through Nick Trainer's work on securing those federal funds through that grant process. So breaking down the projects that we'd like to work on just a little bit, one being electrical work. Currently, there's no backup power for the main wells on the property. If the grid goes down, which it has, the water stops and livestock are limited to what is in storage tanks. We are looking to install plugins for backup generators at each of the stars, which are the main wells. And so the red arrows there kind of point out two of the main ones. At the headquarters, we'd also like to install one just so some of the cattle work is easier to manage. I wanted to point out also at that second red arrow to the right is our missile silo well. And we have some intensive power up there. We've got a 3-phase power and it has shorted quite a bit over the past year. Once due to that tornado, some of the electrical work that's been happening on the property for other construction activities. And we've had a couple of well pumps that have fried. So in addition to the backup for the generators, we're looking at installing additional surge protectors for well in particular. Next is some of the working pens. The headquarters corrals are functional, but they are aging. We are replacing rotting wood poles and degraded sheet metal with more modern materials. And this would be keeping the same layout, which is good and functional and efficient for cattle safety already. But in the next one, thank you. Just another picture showing the degraded wood and some of the sheet metal. And Nick has done an amazing job maintaining these over the years. And so these are some of the older photos, but the materials are it's time for those materials to be replaced. You can only maintain for so long. One of the other things that we're looking at doing is building or purchasing some of these portable stand-up panels. And that would be in lieu of doing additional satellite pens throughout the property. And so these are portable and can be utilized throughout the property wherever needed. And they'll be easy for Nick to manage herds flexibly anywhere on the ranch through his skid steer and a trailer and make a very portable system. Next is water distribution. Water is the lifeblood of Lowry Ranch, as it is on any ranch. And over the past year, we drilled a new well in Box Elder, which is that right white dot on the very east side of the property. Right there, thank you. And we converted an industrial well at Coal Creek for livestock as well.
Sorry about that.
Which is that top star up along Quincy and just west of Watkins. And so we've got these two new wells that are available for livestock, but we need to be able to tie them into our existing water system. And so we're working on pipelines for that, which is those white lines. These projects will help ensure a reliable supply across the property. And as I mentioned, we're tying them into the existing system so they can feed into some of the storage tanks throughout the property and will help ensure that water is available during dry or high pressure times and increase water availability in some of the other pastures that are happening. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about some of the landscaping and property maintenance projects. This work would include painting the historic barn, which is in that top right photo, and then landscaping the new shop area with rock work and some trees to help maintain an aesthetically pleasing area for all of the users of the property. We are also upgrading some of the old barbed wire to more wildlife friendly fencing. There's also some funding that's been built into additional high tensile fence to further divide pastures and to increase some of the rotational grazing abilities. While Nick and I have discussed virtual fencing on this property, we decided it's just not the right fit for Lowry at this time, and that's for a few reasons. As you saw, we've got miles and miles of existing fence as is. Additionally, the critical nature of boundary fences near high traffic roads and a lot of the construction activity that's going on for oil and gas and some of the water projects. We just want to make sure cattle are kept safe at all times, and so need that physical fence at this point. Nick is working on some virtual fencing options on his family's home ranch in the southeast part of the state, and so is learning more and researching, and we'll have those continued conversations about potential application of virtual fence on Lowry another time. And then lastly, this is the slide that shows the full amount. The staff is asking for the cost of all of the projects, including contingency. But as shown, EQIP contributions will actually bring the SLB contribution down significantly. Because these projects have gone through the EQIP fund request as is, that means that archaeological surveys and NRCS environmental studies have already been completed to make sure that these are ecologically sound projects as designed. The other reason I wanted to point out that we're asking for the full funding is so we don't have to come back and ask in the future if any changes happen to the projects or we need additional funds to get this work done. There's a lot of changes with fuel prices and material prices at the moment, and so we want to make sure we've got that buffer area where we need it. And my last slide is for questions. I'm happy to take any questions, but I believe your trainer may also be online if we've got any specific ones for the producer. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Rachel, have you explored any of these RPS solar pumps for moving the water around? I've been using them on my ranch and they're pretty reasonable and very reliable.
Yeah, we do have several solar pumps on the property, and the Box Elder well that I pointed out, we did install a solar pump on that one specifically. The amount of capacity that we have to go, and sometimes some of the not only distance but elevation gains and making it to the storage tanks makes it harder. But the main wells are on the grid, so we have a couple that have solar.
Is it with the new technology and greater capacity of some of these pumps, has that fully been explored in terms of replacing the electric? Yes.
Yeah, we've actually contracted with 3 or 4 different electrical pump companies.
Yeah.
Over the past few years to make sure we're buying the best at this point in time, but always looking for new technology as it comes out.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying about the budgeting. And I'm really excited that we are starting to have projects where the lessee is securing EQIP money. That's really helpful. My question here is, that's, almost half of the project, a little less. And I recognize that there's contingency aspects, but my question is, where's the excess money going to go and when? So, for example, maybe even factoring in a 10% contingency above the 15% contingency, what time will you all decide that the remaining 200,000 is reverted back to the IND fund? Or is it going to be held in a Lowry specific?
It winds up as being kind of on the books, and we don't typically physically move money to encumber it. We just have it in the books. If the money's not spent, it just allows for greater spending. It just exists in the account, in the fund.
And it's not encumbered?
It doesn't have to be. I mean, the encumbrances can be, we can encumber the full amount. Maybe we only spend 2/3 of it. We can unencumber the remaining and just let it be used for other projects.
So it does go back in a sense, right? Not physically. Okay.
Yeah.
And is that something you determine pretty quickly after you've finished all the?
Well, the nice thing about doing this in the last meeting of the fiscal year is that it sort of impairs our ability to spend IND funds from this year's allocation. But next year starts over, 2 weeks starts over, and so it doesn't impact our ability to invest.
All right, that's what I'm, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, but if anyway, never mind. I think you've answered.
The door is wide open. It's nice to have, for staff, it's really nice to have money that we know is committed, and we make sure that it is technically always available. And at some point, if the project owner, our typical board order allows for the money to be used for 2 years. Sometimes we've asked for extensions on those. And when we haven't needed to extend those, the expiration just means the money kind of flows back to the account for other things. Other projects, basically every project runs that way. And so we might have, $6 million. Well, you'll see in my numbers.
Yeah, so
If we were to have to fund all of the remaining amounts for all of the approved board orders, it's like $6 million something dollars. We always have the ability to find that cash because of what we have, because of what's in the fund. We don't have to only use it for those projects. We do have the flexibility.
Chair?
Yes.
Are you ready for a motion?
Yes,
So I move that we approve the use of $481,566 of I&D funds to complete the improvements on Lowry Ranch in Arapahoe County as described in the board documents, board order for this meeting, June 18th.
before I ask for a second on that, let's see if there's any public comment.
Absolutely. Folks listening along online or in the room with us here today, if you would either raise your hand or use the raise hand function on Zoom to make a public comment on this agenda item.
Thank you, Alec. So we have a motion to approve the board order in our packet. Second from Commissioner Heath. Commissioner Pribble, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Scanlon? Aye. Commissioner Heath? Aye. Chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Morning, Commissioners. That's Christopher Smith, the Assistant Director for Energy Innovation. Thanks, Alec, for running the slides from today.
Absolutely. Give me 1 second.
Just Thank you. Commissioners, as a member of the National Association of State Trust Funds, or NASTL as we call it, staff votes on annual organizational resolutions at the annual summer conference, which this year will be held in North Dakota. So staff is presenting these 4 resolutions to the board today, both to seek endorsements for staff to vote in favor of these resolutions, but also to provide a forum to answer any questions that the board may have about these resolutions. So the next slide, please. These resolutions are voted on by all 23 member states of NASTL, or at least the states that come to the meeting and choose to vote on them. This year, there's 4 resolutions, and the ones that pass will be sent to the United States Congress. So that's where they go. Next one. So the first resolution is called the Collaborative Landscape Management Resolution. This one is a little bit of a catch-all, and it recognizes that state trust lands and state land boards have unique statutory and constitutional mandates. And this just ensures continued funding opportunities from the federal government to the states. The second one is the Farm Bill resolution, and specifically this calls out the Good Neighbor Authority, and it encourages Congress to continue on with the Good Neighbor Authority. The third one is the Fix Our Forests resolutions. This one is one that that we had some comments on, and that the other member states that were involved in not crafting but opining on these resolutions mostly agreed to. But this one is very important, as you can imagine, to the states in the Northwest where timber is kind of like their oil and gas, or as oil and gas is to us, it's their main source of funding. And so this was very important to those states. And then the final resolution is an orphan wells resolution. Ask Congress to continue to fund funding for cleanup and flooding orphan areas. So let's see. So with these resolutions, these are included in your packet as exhibits 1 through 4. We also sent these to the Department of Natural Resources Executive Director's Office to seek any comments, both from EDO or other agencies. They sent them out to the Division of Forestry, to ECMC, to CPW. I think those are the ones they sent it to, but
there could be other agencies. And so staff is here to recommend that the board endorse staff in voting in favor of all 4 of these recommendations. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Chris, quick clarifying question. DNR sent all those out. I assume all the response has been received?
Yeah, yes, no comment.
Yeah.
No comment from me, but.
It does seem like this captures a lot of our priorities and reflects, you know, the things we think are important, and we have the leverage of the larger body.
That's correct.
So it's a great pathway to get, you know, our voice heard, it seems.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
But
That's a great, it's a great question. Some of the other states land boards have duties, including forestry, you know, they're all set up a little differently. And so, so these in our state kind of stand over at the ECMC and Division of Forestry, which is why we want to make those happen. Yeah, Mr.
Yes, are there other resolutions on which we've not taken a position, or how do all these?
Yeah, so historically, I have been going to the national conferences for approximately the last 10 years. Last year we hosted, and last year was the first time during my tenure that a director from this state land board is on. So we historically have not voted on them. And last year we did vote on them. And we can, we voted on all of them last year, but we did not vote in favor of all of them last year. So we can certainly abstain from voting as well.
And so I know you'll be going to that one in North Dakota. Does it mean that you will only vote on these on which our board has reviewed, or?
We will only vote on these 4 resolutions. And so the action item today is to put these 4 resolutions in front of you all. And we're seeking your, as a board, endorsement of us as staff voting on these at next meeting.
Yeah, Director Rosemary.
Thank you, Chair Probe. Just to have total clarity, because it's a good question. These are the only 4 resolutions being voted on at NAST. And
that's all right.
And I do want to also point out that NASTL has created a new process with a much longer lead time that's much more inclusive. And as Assistant Director Smith mentioned, we've been very engaged in. So this is a total universe of resolutions. We feel good about them and ask for your support.
Commissioner Harden.
So I'm curious about the stuff in the forest resolution with thinning and healthy forests and all that, because that's very broad. And I assume they mean landscape size thinning. And I guess I have real questions about that with all the stuff I've read lately on the most modern fire science as to its effectiveness, and in some cases counterproductive cases with thinning. So I guess I'd have a real question supporting something that broad with forests.
Yeah, this is the resolution that we had the most comments on as well. I think that some of our concern was the number 2 on the be it therefore resolved as follows. This is one that used to read 10,000 acres instead of 3,000 acres. We had concerns as well. We met with the other state members or representatives from the other state members of NASTL twice on this. And we did get some pushback on this from the other states, specifically Idaho and Montana.
Pushback against that resolution?
No, against our changes to the resolution.
Oh, I see.
Because so the pushback was from Montana, Idaho, and Nevada. Idaho actually was the one who suggested this language that sort of backed off the original language. But this was very important to those states because this is their main source of revenue. Yeah, that's how we ended up where we were. We felt, I think comfortable voting in favor of this, but we also felt like we should bring this to our board. And we certainly have the ability to abstain. We have a chance to, before July 1st, to bring some other recommendations to NASTO. However, I'm not sure that they will be adopted into the final, the final draft of this that we would vote on.
And do you have a sense, is this sort of in alignment with the US Forest Services?
Yeah.
I guess I would have real reservations supporting that. I think what I've read about the tens of millions of acres that they want to thin. I have real reservations about that. And can we support 3 of the 4 of these, or do we want to vote on all 4 of these resolutions?
Yeah, we can support 3 of the 4, and we can abstain or vote against
Okay.
any one of these. I would note this one, sort of the nexus with state trust lands is, you'll notice they sort of call out the Good Neighbor Authority as well. And so this is supporting the Fix Our Forest Act as a whole, but I think the intention is, to continue to work in conjunction with federal government on state trust land.
So Mark, do you want some alternative language?
I mean, it's such a big issue, and it's, my reading of the US Forest Services plans, I think it's pretty worrisome what they plan to do. And so I personally couldn't support this part of it. I'm not quick enough to give you a good language,
What specifically, like, because I'm not familiar with all.
Well, the idea is, in broad terms, to go into millions and millions of acres across the country and do a lot of thinning as a way of mitigating fire of wildfires. And there's a lot of new science out there saying that thinning can be counterproductive, opening up the canopy and drying up the understory, allowing, greater airflow, etc. And that it can be counterproductive to wildlife. It can be, in some cases, probably create more volatility in the forest. And there's a whole anthology, if you want to read it, on thinning and firefighting and stuff. And so I'm not convinced it's a good plan to do it on these tens of millions of acres across the country.
Do you happen to know, I'm just curious, these would not include acres that are like in roadless areas or wilderness areas, or do you know?
I think it's certainly areas that aren't wilderness, and I think it's areas that are wilderness too. I'm not sure there's some foresters here. There were.
When you need them.
But I think it's some of each. I should read the plan better. But there's, millions of acres that are outside wilderness areas that are certainly, they plan to thin.
Yeah.
And it's quite impactful. You got to take a lot of heavy machinery in there.
It also leads to erosion.
Yeah, and so I question the science, the broad sweep of what the US Forest Service is saying about this. So I would not support that part of the thing.
Okay, Commissioner Pribbles had his hand up.
The number one, I share Commissioner Harvey's concern. I'm not an expert at all on forest management, but there's a number of major national environmental and conservation groups that are very opposed to the approach proposed in Fix Our Forest, and especially this Forest Service goals and objectives under this current administration. So we have several questions. We could, entertain a motion to deal with the other 3, and but vote against this particular one on the Forest Fix Our Forest Act. That's point number 1, or suggested number 1. Number 2, and then we could, at some subsequent workshop or meeting, invite, again, state forestry or whoever is subject matter expert to to educate us as a group more deeply than we have time for in the moment. That's number one. Number two, there's Garrison Keillor, the great American humorist, long ago, 40 years ago, said, Americans created an association for everything. And so now we, of course, have had a long-standing association of state land agents. But I guess my question is simply this. Beyond these resolutions, which are to give guidance to the federal lobbyist for the trade association, NASTLA, or whatever you call it, is there any other value to our membership in this trade association? I presume there must be, but I'd like to know what it is. I assume that we pay dues of some amount. I'd like to know what those dues are and how do you, and what other benefit is derives to the state of Colorado. So that's my second point. Thirdly, we learned this because Josie and I went to the meeting in Denver last year. This is kind of classic grade school politics. How many states are members? 22, 24?
23.
23. So, but each state gets one vote, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it's just simply, and so it's not proportional representation. Wyoming and Nevada and whatever, states with small populations have just as much influence as California or Colorado or Washington. And so it ends up being nothing more than a straight out red state versus blue state vote on every issue we observed last summer at the national meeting. So I just want to make that point of information to the board. So number one, let's go back to a motion that approves our position on 3, but not the forest one. I don't know however that needs to be phrased. And then secondly, either now or at some future meeting, address the question of what's our investment in this association and what's our benefit? Doesn't have to be today, but I'd like it as an information item in a future meeting.
Well, you raised the question about maybe a workshop in terms of the whole management of forest, because we've discussed this with Cal Christie and the Goose, and that we have some concerns.
Excuse me. Well, it sounds like we probably are not. I'm reading the whereases are the preamble, but the actual resolution is separate from that, and it feels like, as much as I think the Good Neighbor Authority is super important, we would be negligent not to support that, but I don't think there's any time to amend this. I mean, we're either going to say yes or we're going to say no. So I don't know. Yeah, or abstain. Yeah. You're following me.
I can offer an amendment then that just says they're free except for the fact.
Well, yeah, I think that's where we're at. My point being, are we supportive? I get the whereases are problematic. Are we supportive of what they're trying to do in the actual resolution?
In the forest, it's 2 of the 4, right?
No, sorry, the Good Neighbor is a 2 and 4, and that was some of the comments that we had to the group. They were sort of merging these, and so we pulled them apart, but the group felt it was important to reference Good Neighbor in the Fix Our Forests. I'd also like to clarify for my knowledge, mostly from Commissioner Harvey, you're concerned about this because of the impacts on the Forest Service land, correct? Not on, I mean, the idea that this doesn't give Congress or the Forest Service any management of state trust lands.
No, but it expresses our support of Fix Our Forests.
Okay.
And I don't know how the other commissioners feel.
Well, if we're not, if there's reservations about Fix Our Forest, that's a direct point in the resolution.
Yeah.
So then we should not vote on this.
Yeah, no, and this is helpful for me when I'm voting to give the group some background on why we're not voting for it. And so and I completely understand. I just want to clarify that it's the Fix Our Forests we're opposed to, not necessarily.
That's my point.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Yeah. So two other things. One is the board could make a motion to approve 3 of the 4. But I would love for the board to make a motion on the 4th one to either direct staff to vote against it or to abstain from voting on it. Those are the other 2 options.
All right,
And
Madam
I'd
Chair.
love some clarifications.
Director Rosemary.
Thank you, Chair Frobe. My preference would be, you decide not to support the Fix Our Forests, to direct staff to abstain from it. And that is because Nassau has been very gracious. We've broken down the red versus blue state divide through a really nice inclusive process where they heard our concerns and made some changes. And so it's an improvement on what you observed last year, Commissioner Pribble. And so I'd like to encourage more of the same. And I don't think we'd be encouraging that if we then oppose a resolution that we helped to shape.
Right, I'm quite willing to structure a motion out of respect for the director and.
I
just the director.
we have a little more dialogue before we against. I am very supportive of that. That was my instinct as well, to abstain. I found that I would like a workshop. I found value. I went to Nashville as well, not the whole time, but part of the time. But I don't know enough about Fix Our Forest, so I'm leaning on your recommendation to abstain from this one, and I'm comfortable with that. But I'm also thinking then, I feel like we should be supportive. They've heard us, they've been inclusive of these others, if we're comfortable with that as a land board. And it feels like you've done a lot of vetting and a lot of conversation, and staff. Is there other, you said staff had the most concerns about this one as well. Does staff have other concerns embedded in the other resolutions?
No, we really don't. Our major concerns in the resolutions were how they were organized. They had things that should have been, that were in the whereas, which should have been in the now therefore. And then they had the 2 Fix Our Forests and Farm Bills kind of merged together and wanted clarity to pull those apart. So we don't have concern with the other 3.
And I would like to make an observation too, based on Commissioner Scanlon's point of the resolutions are what really count, whereas are influential, but the resolution is what really counts. I'm not familiar with the Save Our Forests Act in toto, but there are a lot of very positive, meaningful management, cooperation, restoration at landscape scale that are called out here from the act. That again, this is, Master will probably vote for these, but I just want to call the commissioner's attention to it, that there are losses when you don't support that. And then just for interest, I just asked Claude what the trade-offs were. And as Commissioner Harvey suggested, thinning helps manage wildfire risk. There are serious environmental concerns, and I can read them to you. But I thought the last paragraph was, the core tension is real. Unmanaged high severity fire also causes severe ecological damage. So the question is often which disturbance regime better matches historical conditions for a given forest. Just clarification.
Yeah.
So with the conclusion being of that last sentence.
That thinning has implications, and so does not thinning.
Yeah.
So it's kind of where you are matters and how you do it matters.
Right, and I don't think our resolution is gonna change
No,
the US course.
No, I agree. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, no,
Hold that.
It's our self-education as we sit here.
Yeah.
And I'm online looking up Fix Our Forest and you're tasking Claude.
No, I mean, it's a big issue, but
it's a very clumsy way to educate ourselves.
Yeah, but it's a start and it's relevant to the decision we have to make. So I feel like it's a productive conversation.
I'm not saying it's not productive. I'm saying it's clumsy.
Well, when one abstains, it's because you don't feel you have enough information.
I think since we do hold about 70,000 acres dedicated as forest, plus a lot more on other lands, is worth really getting to know this stuff.
Yeah,
And getting the very best.
So I think that's a clear direction out of this conversation.
Yeah.
It's been very helpful. And so I think now the decision in front of us is whether or not, I think we split it into two parts, revise the board order to reflect a vote on 3 of the resolutions, and then maybe have a vote on the 4th resolution. Are we directing staff to vote for it, abstain, or vote against?
So,
That-
Madam Chair, I think I can do it in one motion. And this is out of respect for efficiency.
Take a crack at it.
Well, simply put, I would say, you know, based on Assistant Director Smith's presentation about resolutions that National Association of State Trust Land Resolutions, we endorse support of items 1, 2, and 4. So item 1, collaborative landscape; 2, Farm Bill resolution; 4, Orphan Wells. And further, we direct that Director Smith abstain on item 3. Pure and simple.
Does that work, Chris, for you in terms of
I think
direction?
procedurally that works, yeah.
Okay, great. So you've just heard the motion. We'll need to document that. I suppose you can take notes and do that. We need a second for that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Heath. Commissioner Pribble, how do you vote?
Aye.
Oh, excuse me. Do we have any public comment?
Folks listening along online, please use the raise hand function to provide public comment on this agenda item.
We have one in the room.
Yeah.
One in the room. You can come up and just introduce yourself to the board once again, and this good. Yeah. Hi, Kobe Corporal, Jackson County Commissioner. Thank you for public comment time. I'll try and keep this brief. I appreciate the comment of breaking down the blue and red barriers. I think that's important. You're here to vote for what's best for, I think, Colorado, not the politics of Colorado. So I can tell you, we live this situation up here and have for decades. You're about to deal with pine beetle infestation on the Front Range, which we were ground zero for Colorado for that. You do not thin your forests. You are going to be cleaning them up for decades. And you have houses in far greater number than we ever had. The implications of not thinning your forests now are when the fire comes through, which it will, that's Mother Nature. We don't have humidity to break down this destruction that happens. It will lay on the ground, it will not be composed, and it's a tinderbox to burn again. But that soil becomes very nutritious again, Mother's Nature. We are starting to see trees stand so close together, and I've had this discussion with Colorado State Forest. The tree stands are so tight, the trees are this big, the canopy is so thick, the water cannot shed through the canopy and hit the ground. It's creating issues that we have not dealt with in a long time. But you are going to continue to amplify what we have already lived. And I understand that NASDAQ might see this vote with the majority, but Colorado has been dealing, we've had some of the largest fires in state's history here in the last 10 years, and you can still go up those same fires and you can't even hardly walk around because the trees are just laying on the ground, not completely burned. They don't just go away, they have to be cleaned up. So I would like to urge this group to reconsider and abstain and vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pribble.
So let me just respond to that. I appreciate the public comment. And I think an abstention in my case is that we need more information before we make a final decision. For all of us who've experienced forest fires in counties throughout the state, we're asking for a workshop and finding out more information. So I plan to support this and abstain based on needing more information about the efficacy of various policies.
Right. And so I concur with Josie, and I'm looking online, and I don't know if this is a current sediment or not, up to date or not, but Colorado, there's an item that says Colorado State Forest Director Matt McCombs is, I don't know if anybody in the room knows whether McCombs is still in that position.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Current.
Yeah, okay. approved a number of provisions that would help Colorado, such as the Joint Chiefs Landscape Restoration Program, but more broadly supports the act, the overall act, for its expansion of forest and watershed health efforts. That's the kind of thing that would help educate us about what the experts in our state. And that's why we need, as Josie suggested, a workshop. And I think abstention, by the way, is not voting no, but it's not voting yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I would like to point out again on this vote that the resolution is from State Land Trust, but it is about, as far as the practices go, it's about public federal forest, not state forest. It's more about collaboration with our forest. So
yeah, no, correct.
Just to say, not having enough information, we need a workshop to understand forestry and issues as it applies to state land board holdings. Not necessarily to whether or not in any given application, the Forest Service is going to thin or not thin. So anyway, I do think that the issue we also need to consider is we are working with a group to have a voice in Congress, and there are a number of other things that are really important in this act. So putting that out for consideration with my other commissioners. Are there any other comments or sort of rationale from the commissioners on how they intend to vote on this motion that is currently on the table?
Well, I like the voting yes on 3 of the proposals and abstain from the other, so I support the board on that.
All righty then. Well, then let's have a vote. Commissioner Crowell?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes.
We have had,
pressure.
No, I'm just.
we have had information before on how we're doing wildfire mitigation on state lands. We've had workshops before, but it might be healthy and helpful for new commissioners to revisit that.
Or even me, I haven't done that.
And when we did that in response to some of the fires that happened either on our land or close by.
And I think we all agree, there's no difference between federal forests and state forests in terms of where the fire decides to go.
For sure.
So we recognize that. But, I think that kind of workshop would be useful to us.
Yeah.
And as soon as you all felt like you have the capacity to put that together.
I think that would come into that, right?
So.
Last question, Madam Chair. You want to address in a future information item, the benefits of NASA? I mean, again, I don't need that piece now, but.
Yeah, I can tell you, in my view, there's a lot of benefits to Nestle. I mean, we, voting on the resolutions, we really haven't been that engaged in this historically, but we still found a lot of benefit to attending the annual conference.
Right.
I believe that it costs us around $5,000 a year to be a member of NASTL. And the benefits are that the other states are the only other organizations that do what we do, that overlap on the different lines of business and have the same or roughly the same mission that we have. And so we collaborate with them, not just on ideas, but we have a repository of different lease forms. We have relationships where I can pick up the phone or email other directors of other state land boards to ask, like I did with Utah recently, can I get a copy of your geothermal lease? Because we're right in the middle of doing this and we'd love to see that. And so those are the benefits. And the meeting once a year, as you can imagine, the other staffs of other states similar to our state are very, they have very long tenure. So these are strong relationships that are developed over a number of years. So I think one of the main benefits, and then of course we get to actually see what's happening. 2 years ago, I was in Idaho. We saw a timber mill, we toured it, and a lot of the breakout sessions were about just how important timber is to the funding of Idaho's public schools. So I think that's a big benefit, and I really appreciate the board voting to abstain versus to vote against, because this one really does hit the bottom line in some of our member states. So they're feeling it in a different way. I feel like. So
just conveying to them that our abstention meant that we lacked information.
I definitely made exactly that note, and that's what I think.
Well, and I would support this organization staying in Nashville, $5,000. I pay more for a publication in DC on who's in the agencies and congressional members. That is not. And I thought the conference was highly educational. I learned a ton about best practices around other states. And I thought our staff did an amazing job presenting what we do well, and we're a model for those other states as well. And to share that is in the collective good. So I don't need to learn more. I think it's a great organization, and we should be a part of it. I think we're leaders in a lot of the areas that we participate in.
And we're still learning from some of the others.
Still learn.
So I 100% endorse our continued status. Director Rosemary.
Thank you, Chair Frobe. To accommodate Commissioner Pripple's request, I think Assistant Director Smith and I can pledge to give a robust report out from the July NASTL conference.
There you go.
Thank you.
That'd be very good.
All right, so now I think we have what we need on this item. Thank you very much, Assistant Director Smith, and we'll move on to the geologic carbon sequestration leasing policy.
So I'm here today to propose some updates to our geological carbon sequestration policy. Just a reminder that your actions here today help support the revenue for our beneficiaries from this program, as well as reduce greenhouse gases in line with the emission targets for our state. And this is James Day, who's the Renewable Energy Program Manager. So I just wanted to give a little background on the technology itself and some updates on what's going on in this line of business. So as the technology background, basically what happens here is they drill these wells, class 6 wells they're called, and you may have heard Aaron Ray mention that class 6 wells are currently being organized by or regulated by the EPA, but soon will be regulated by the ECMC here in Colorado. So they dig these class 6 wells and under certain basins where there's basically cap rock, hard rock with a porous layer in between, and they pump CO2 directly down into this storage area where it remains permanently. So just to also differentiate this from, you may be familiar with our biological carbon storage or carbon sequestration program. Using plants to store carbon, this is a technology where it is drilled into the surface and pumped underground, ideally forever. And then two points I also want to make. Obviously, this happens underground. However, we define the pore space as part as the surface agreement. So it is not part of the subsurface lease, it is part of the surface lease. And also, just to say, there's no intrinsic value of generated from storing carbon underground. Basically, this whole line of business is dependent on tax credits and truly tax credits at the federal level. Specifically, the 45Q tax credit gives $85 per ton of carbon sequestered. There is potential for voluntary markets in sort of a cap and trade scenario to benefit this, but right now it's really the 45Q tax credit that drives any sort of revenue that could be generated from this line of business. Also just showing that Colorado does have a lot of storage space, you could say carbon storage resource, to support this line of business. There's this saline reservoir or salt formations, which is the type of basin that's required to store carbon underground in this manner. And just, yeah, it's putting off a little bit here, but just to say there's like 134 billion metric tons of pore space available for carbon sequestration projects. The next one. So currently we have a whopping 1 active lease in the carbon sequestration up here in Washington County. The plan for this one is to, it will store CO2 via pipeline from the Sterling and Yuma ethanol plants. Ethanol plants are one of the main sources of potential overlap with carbon sequestration. They produce a very pure stream of CO2. So there's no additional processing that needs to be done. They can sort of take this CO2 waste stream from their ethanol production and pump that straight underground after a pipeline into where the injection site is here just south. So yeah, we have this one lease. It's 7,000 acres in Washington County. Even with our current rent of $12 an acre per year, its current rent is $84,000, and our total program revenue to date is just over $1.2 million. So we have previously had 2 other carbon sequestration leases, which have since canceled. I know, although just this week, there's been movement on some of the Department of Energy project cancellations. This large 15,000 acre lease down south in the Pueblo, El Paso counties is one that was really dependent on federal grants. It was Colorado School of Mines, the giant cement the giant cement factory there, working together to generate some research and to do carbon storage. They've canceled as all of their federal grants were pulled. Although, the Department of Energy is suing the federal government, and I just saw today that a lot of those grants are being reinstated. So just to say, the market is really dependent on grants at the federal level, and there's a lot changing right now in that process. Okay, so here are the proposed changes. Honestly, really nothing majorly substantial. First, it updates the accountability to myself, the Renewable Energy Program Manager. There's some language standardization. We want to kind of get rid of the word storage, even though it's common in the field, just so that we don't get confused with battery energy storage or other types of storage. And always saying sequestration instead, sequestration instead of storage. And then geologic carbon sequestration to differentiate from the biological program. Also standardizing language from subsurface to pore space, since as I mentioned, it's part of the surface use agreement. We just want to be clear that this is not a mineral right, it's a surface right. We're removing some of the dollar per acre lease requirements in the policy. We feel that's more procedural, kind of gives us more room to negotiate as this market is pretty volatile and wide open. And then maybe most substantially is we add a 3rd tier of lease to our existing 2 tiers of lease, which are injection, which we do not have, exploration, which is basically allowing them to dig test wells, do their site surveys and everything like that. And we're adding a kind of basic lease reminiscent of our renewable energy program, the planning lease, which really it gives them site control, but no ground disturbance whatsoever at a low lease rate. So if they need to say, we have this property, so we can apply for grants, apply for things like that, it allows them to do that before they're even ready to dig their test wells. Great, so the recommendation is that today you vote to approve this to help this line of business move forward, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Yes.
Thank you for this. When you mentioned the cement plant site, did you say that was just a research grant?
No, it was not just a research grant. There was an intention to kind of start with some research programming with CSU, but ultimately their original plan was to do a large scale active like carbon injection plant. So fully functional at scale CO2 storage.
With School of Mines, sorry.
What's that?
I would support doing it on that side. Is that what this intent of that was?
That was the intent of that lease. They canceled due to their federal funds being.
Right, right, and I think that's really worth exploring because the more we can do the kind of restoration on the site where it's being created would make a lot of sense, especially since that's one of our major emitting sites.
That's true, yes, and cement is kind of identified as one of these hard to decarbonize sectors. There's kind of not an alternative as there are with almost everything else to mitigate CO2. It kind of requires a CO2 storage mechanism,
So what you were responding to Jesse's comment?
I was, yeah. So yeah, that lease was our biggest carbon sequestration lease. It was with Carbon America, which is a company that has now started to go under. It was on not just the Chico Basin Ranch, but also the Brett Gray Ranch. So it was a big project that was going to be at the terminus of a pipeline. And one of their major sort of customers, for lack of a better term, was to be the GCC cement plant that we toured, I guess, 2 years ago, it seems like. And so that was the idea there. That just fell apart about 6 months ago when the grant was pulled because of the lack of funding. So it's something that I think we hope will come back around. And but Carbon America, we've kept in contact with our contacts within Carbon America, but the company itself is not coming back. So.
So the economics of this is the emitter doesn't really gain anything. It's all the third party offsets.
The emitter can receive these tax credits, basically the 45Q tax credits at $85 per.
Okay, and is it the third party offsets as well, or is it just the tax credit?
It's the tax credits, but there could be a market here. So there certainly could be a voluntary market. So if, say, GCC, if you'll recall, people from GCC came and presented to the board a few months ago. If they have a company, goal to be net neutral, this could be a way that they do it. So that would be voluntary.
I see.
There's also GIM laws in Colorado, which it could help them to meet because there's not a whole lot of ways for these hard to abate industries like cement plants to do that. So it's a very, very beginning stages of this market, especially in Colorado. So that's kind of we're trying to pursue all of the.
That's right, and the federal tax credit specifically allows for kind of this credit stacking. So if there's a voluntary market to arise nationally or internationally, they can take advantage of that. And like, for example, the California low carbon fuel standard, which this ethanol plant will support partially, they can even receive some credits through that mechanism as well and still qualify for the federal 45Q. So there's kind of some moving pieces, but obviously turmoil at the federal level that's kind of hurting some of our projects, and who knows what this will look like in the next few years.
All right, Commissioner Whipple, thank you for your patience.
So, in as much as sequestration requires no ground disturbance, are we still able to stack leases, say for some surface use, like a hunting lease? Or habitat restoration?
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because at our carbon sequestration sites, it's fairly similar to an oil gas well. There'll be like a pad with a well basically, and then the rest of the area can be relatively undisturbed.
Okay, and do we have current examples of that, or is that potential for the future?
I'm not sure of the status of the ag leases on our one existing site. I mean, it's 7,000 acres.
It is leased. It's leased to a guy named Kenny Rogers, actually, and but also the Chico Basin was leased when we leased that. So they work together very well. There's a minimal surface footprint.
Yeah.
Okay, how's the lease we toured down in San Luis Valley with land and carbon?
Yeah.
Is that under this policy, or that's a different?
That would be under the biologic carbon policy managed by Mindy's group.
And explain how that's different.
Sure. Yeah. Biologic carbon would be grasslands or timber. And so the main difference is that geologic carbon is much more expensive upfront. drill, they go into the pore space, which in Colorado, pore space is considered a surface estate, not a mineral estate, which is a little strange, but, and so, you would be taking emitted carbon and putting it into the ground, whereas biologic carbon is, not releasing the carbon that's in the ground.
Got it, okay. And they're starting to use abandoned wells, aren't they, for carbon sequestration?
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about that. I've heard that they are, but I don't.
Class 6 status that is formally the EPA will soon meet CMC is a required status for a bulk carbon injection. So even if it was previously oil and gas well, it needs to then be re-permitted for the class 6 in order to operate.
Nice. Okay.
But that is my understanding is that there is potential.
And I think people are definitely looking into that.
Yeah.
It's so logical. Ed, I believe you had a question.
Well, I just want to clarify, the concept of whether pore space is surface or mineral is not quite as definitive as we've stated here, as many things are. It's more nuanced than that. The policy doesn't really take a position. In some ways, pore space is its own estate right now. And there's some statutory provisions that may or may not actually define the state trust where pore space fits within state trust lands as opposed to private lands. It's all to say it's just not as absolute. It's not as definitive. The policy doesn't really take a position. All it does is really clarify that wherever it resides, the land board, well, our reservation reserves the pore space, and this is how we are treating the pore space within trust lands, rather than, and here's, because we may be arguing different positions sometime in the future of where the pore space resides. Just want to be clear that the land board is not taking a declarative position that the pore space is part of the surface estate rather than the mineral estate. This is merely how the land board is managing its pore space when it is working with sequestration. Functionally within the state, shorthand, and particularly because of the statute that was passed in 2024, it's shorthand, it's easier to contemplate it as part of the surface estate, which is why Chris and James are contemplating it that way, because that's the shorthand, but it's just a more, I hate to keep using the word nuanced, but it's just a more nuanced argument, and I just don't want us to get ahead. And if we are coming back to tell you at some time later that we are arguing that it is not part of the surface, I don't want you to be, wait a minute, we've been hearing it's part of the surface. So hopefully that muddies all the water, like erosion through cleared forest.
We could add 3 million acres of pore space to our portfolio.
Exactly. That's a camera.
I think this is a really smart thing that we're doing with this. I was just at a meeting in DC a week ago, and this was one of the topics. ExxonMobil's really engaged in this in Texas and Louisiana. So this world is coming our way, and I think we're ahead of the game we had our one lease, but we've been talking about a couple of years. And I think this is a really smart policy. So I just want to compliment the work that's done into it.
Very much.
We still got a lot building.
We do.
Yeah.
You're saying that the biggies are doing that.
It's part of Clean Firm Energy, kind of as a larger scale look at the evolution of thinking about energy in this country.
My question was on whether or not you knew or found out at the meeting to what degree they were reusing oil and gas wells that have been reclassified.
I didn't, that wasn't brought up. It was just brought up the investment that they're making in this kind of technology.
I know there's a lot of ones around that.
I've heard that on the periphery, but was not.
Sounds like a good idea.
Conversation.
Yes, it is about
Talking about it.
I guess they cover that with the classification of a, what do you call it, class 6?
Yeah.
So if it passes that muster, then.
Yeah.
Probably can be reused. Any other thoughts or comments on this issue? Let's look for public comment.
Yeah, folks in the room or listening along online, please use the raise hand function or raise your hand if you help, to engage public comment on this agenda item. Mr. Pro, I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay, thank you. So may I have a motion on this board item?
Make a motion that the board determines that it's in the best interest of the trust to approve the proposed modifications to the geologic carbon sequestration leasing policy 300-011.
That works. Can we have a second, please?
Second.
Right. Commissioner Pribble, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Martin?
Aye.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath? Aye. And the chair votes yes, and I concur with Commissioner Scanlon that it's great that we've been thinking through these issues, and undoubtedly this policy will grow and get more complicated as we learn more. And I'd like to commend James on his first board presentation. Very good. Well done. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the board leasing agenda.
Great. Commissioners, this is Nick Massey, Deputy Director. Here to present you the June 2026 board leasing agenda for your consideration and vote. As a reminder, the board leasing agenda represents those items that fall outside of the staff authority established by the policies of those respective lines of business, but tend not to be of such weighty matter that they can get a presentation in front of the board individually. You've been presented with an agenda that has 5 transactions on it total. I would like to ask for amendment to that material such that item number 2 will be moved to a future agenda. So I'm asking for your approval on amended 4 transactions total, 2 competitive bids, 1 new lease, and 1 extension of a solar planning lease. If you've got any questions about the items on that agenda, I'm happy to attempt to answer them or throw them in the peanut gallery for additional information. So otherwise, look forward to your support.
Yeah, this is your.
I know, I was about ready to say that I'm gonna hit pause and not have a comment or question today. So leaving room for others. Not amending.
Commissioner Pro, you tend to ask about those leases that crop up when they're vacant previously. And one of those on there was a previously vacant.
Right, but you're pulling it. Number 2?
Number 2.
That's the vacant parcel.
No, thinking of. Number 4. Was.
Oh, yeah, and you only got, I noted you only got 1.
And just because it's relatively proximate to where we're sitting, I just wanted to point out that that's our Crystal Mountain property, which suffered a pretty heavy burn during the Cameron Peak fire. And I think my directions are right, it's approximately that way from us. And so it sat vacant as we were working on some restoration, and access is difficult generally to it. So we didn't have huge interest in it, but we got somebody who's interested in leasing it.
And so after the fire, the forage has been restored to attract.
Yep.
Great, Commissioner Pribble.
May I?
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you. Lease number 2, Larimer County, Casey Barber. The question, not to question the suggestion of the lease, but I'm struck by the high rent rate for AUM. Can you explain why that is merited?
Yeah, just to bring it up very clearly, that is the item that I'm asking us to not vote on this time around.
This is going to hold though.
But it's noteworthy that the previous lease on that one was even more expensive.
Really? Why is it is it just a really fertile area or what? It's good. Oh.
Rachel, you want?
Yes, happy to help answer that. Rachel Turner, field operations team, That property is just west of Wellington, which is a very urban area and a lot of development, and so it's a highly valued property. I also wanted to just point out our competitive bid rates are kind of falling in that general area right now. So we are seeing higher bids for AUM rate at the moment.
Big market.
So yeah, just to clarify, be as clear as I can for the record, I'm asking for your vote on items 1, 3, 4, and 5.
Thank you for that clarification. All right, do we have any public comment on this item?
Folks listening along online, would like to make public comment on this agenda item, please use the raise hand function. Seeing only staff at the attendance side.
Commissioners, any other comments or questions? Then they have a motion.
Madam Chair, I move the board adopt the board leasing agenda items number 1, 3, 4, and 5 for June 2026. To delegate authority to the director to take appropriate action.
Second.
Is that good enough for you? And we have a second from Commissioner Pribble. Commissioner Heath, how do you vote? Aye. Commissioner Scanlon? Aye. Commissioner Kirby?
Aye.
Commissioner Pribble?
Aye.
Chair votes yes, motion carries and the board leasing agenda is approved. As to the minutes, I've reviewed them. Those were a little more complicated to put together based on the last meeting, but they appear to be in order, and so.
I just have to ask a question on page 8. Is it actually a word to say that we decided to untable the matter?
Yes, don't you remember? I thought it was.
Well, I know, I agree with the action, but I didn't think you called it to untable.
I was told at that last meeting it was officially untable. As opposed to,
I just have never heard that word.
Me neither. Who made it? Was it you, Ed?
I have no recollection.
Yeah, I agree with you, but that.
Okay, all right.
I was told to, and I can't remember
I do
exactly.
not want to argue that between now and then.
No, exactly. So, unless there are any other comments, modifications or whatever. I move that the minutes are adopted by acclamation, or I say they are. Okay, good. And I don't, commissioners, do you have any other issues? All right, and information items. So thank you for a productive meeting. Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for the field trip yesterday. It was so great to see you.
Yeah. And thank you, public, for attending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great man.
Okay. Consider the meeting over.
Mr.